we're going to be talking about today, we've been talking about these people in the Bible who, they're there, but you don't really know them all that well. Last week we talked about a desperate dad, and today we're going to talk about another desperate dad. When you hear the word desperate, what do you think of? I'm sorry? Given up on hope. You'll do anything to right the situation. You're at your wit's end. Maybe you sort of feel like this. This is a wave, and your life, you're riding the wave, and it is just what? Desperate. It is overpowered. What are your chances against this wave? None, zero, zilch, 86, nothing. Or maybe you feel like it's coming at you like this, that, what chance do you have? You have no way out, right? You're in does anybody ever lived at a cul-de-sac? Do you know what a cul-de-sac is? What is a cul-de-sac? It's a court, yeah. It's an end. It's a thing. You go in and there's how many ways out? There's one. The way you came back, right? You got to go out the way you came. And you feel like there is someone or something in the way that's blocking you. That makes you feel desperate. How do you feel in your gut or in your back or in your head when life is desperate? Scared. What else? That's when you pray. Stress. You have, in the words of that immortal words of the commercial, you have the drip, drip, drip of excess stomach acid. I know none of you remember that. And when you are desperate, you have come to the conclusion that close is not enough. You need something over the top, something big, something that's just going to blow it up. Horseshoes, you get a point for what? Just being close. You don't have to throw a ringer, but if you're just close enough. But when you're desperate, you just can't be close enough. You've got to have something big, something overpowering. It's like this scene from this episode of MASH.
Okay, here we go. Down and dirty.
What's your problem, poker face?
I'm committing suicide.
Go out and turn, Sidney. Oops, just found something. But I'll check.
Hey, I bought the 5th jack. I'm out.
Dealer bets $10. Colonel?
Colonel? Let's see here.
Fondling your chips is very infantile.
Not now, Sidney.
Colonel?
Not now, Radar.
Yes, sir.
Radar, whatever it is, sign it, cancel it, or order 5 more. All right, Klinger. I'll see your bet. What do you got?
Full house. Aces full of 10s.
Oh, rats. Just missed.
Pair of deuces?
I don't have to show.
Klinger's got a full house, aces over 10s, and a pair of deuces, it wasn't even close, right? And when you're desperate, isn't that sort of how you feel? The cards you're holding are not going to win. Whoever's on the other side, whatever's that other thing coming at you, is going to overpower you. And that's exactly how this desperate dad, number 2, felt. Jesus and his disciples, James, Peter, and John, have just had a spiritual high. Do you know what's a spiritual high? You ever had one of those? Yeah. What's a spiritual high?
It's just letting go and letting God and having a party.
Having a party with God. That's a good one. I like that. They were up on top of a mountain, and Jesus' appearance changed. It's called the Transfiguration. And God comes down and speaks and said, "This is my beloved Son." And the disciples just freak out and they fall down. They've just had this great experience, and they're coming down, And guess what happens? They run into a problem. Has that ever happened to you? Life is, you're on top of the world. You know, it's that old song, I'm sitting on top of the world. You know, and these guys, and you come down to, why are you laughing at me? And, you know, the world just all of a sudden falls apart. And that's exactly where Jesus comes. Jesus and these disciples, Peter, James, and John, came to where the other disciples were. And what did they see? Not just a crowd, not just a couple of guys, not a large crowd. And what are they doing? We're with the teachers of the law, and what are they doing? Stop the presses. People arguing. I'm shocked. Aren't you shocked? Do you ever see people argue? If you ever get on social media, I got this guy on LinkedIn who seems to think it's his personal responsibility. It is his God-given assignment to stick it to me. And, you know, it doesn't matter what I write. He's like, you're wrong, go away. And, you know, it's just like, do you have anything else to do? Do you have any other friends? You know, what's going on? Do you ever have people like that, situations like that, that it just seems like you're walking into a wall? You're walking in and you know they're coming after you. And that's what's happening. They're coming in, and even, you know, with Jesus, you think, you know, everything is flowers and birds and it's all beautiful. No, he walks into an argument, and it's not a debate. These people are yelling and screaming at one another. It sounds like the house I grew up in. It does. I think I've told you this story before. First time I brought Mary Ann home. The very first time I brought her in, come on. Okay, we'll wave at you. So the very first time I'm bringing Mary Ann home to meet my parents. You know, we've just started dating, and my mom is making her infamous, or should I say famous, fried chicken. And so we go in, and we have a very nice dinner. I think we walk in, and my parents greet her, and, you know, she's not the kind of girl that they wanted for me, but, you know, what are you going to do? And so anyway, we walk out of the house. I'm thinking things went pretty well. We're walking down, I'm taken to the car. She grabs my arm. Pulls me and says, when are they getting the divorce? And I said, what do you mean? I said, they're yelling and screaming at one another. I said, I thought it was pretty nice. You know, it's all what you're used to. That's the argument. There's no debating. And they keep on arguing. You notice that about an argument? Does an argument stop real quick? Not unless you walk out. It just goes on. And that's this kind of argument. It just keeps going on and on and on. And Jesus asked them, he asked to the disciples, what are you arguing about? You know, tell me. You know, they were part of the problem. The disciples are part of the argument. They're going back and forth and back and forth. And here is the problem. And they don't even get a chance to answer. A guy in the crowd answers. And he says, teacher, I brought you my son. He's the desperate dad. And what's wrong? What kind of condition is his son in? He's possessed. Now, is that like saying, you know, I need some hair gel? Is that my problem? No. Is that what possessed means? No. He's possessed by a spirit. This is real. And how do I know? What does this spirit do to his son? Takes away his speech, and then when it seizes him, what does it do? Throws him to the ground. And he foams at the mouth. He gnashes his teeth, and he becomes rigid. I asked your disciples to drive the spirit out. And here's a big but. They couldn't. Doesn't it seem Jesus, you're guys. You're walking around with them. Haven't you given them, didn't you pull out your spiritual wallet and say, here's a credit card for you and here's some cash for you. Didn't you give them the resources to heal? What's up with that? These guys have got to be defective. That's what's wrong. They got the problem. And so they couldn't do it. They didn't have the power, the strength. They couldn't win the fight. Now, here's Jesus with this father. He's a desperate father for his son, right? Any of you feel like that about a son that you've got? You're desperate for them? And Jesus, this desperate father, how would you think Jesus is going to respond? He's going to go up, kind Jesus. He's going to put his arm around him, right? He's going to comfort him. He's going to say, let's pray for you. Or he's going to say, be kind to him. Or tell people to get him a drink of water. No. Jesus comes right back at him and his disciples and says, you unbelieving generation. Wow. That's direct, isn't it? That is direct. You unbelieving generation. How long shall I stay with you? How long shall I what? Put up with you. Now, I know nobody ever said that about you. Your parents never said, oh man, I got to put up with you again. My dad was great up with that. It's like, he had to put up with me. Mom said, Chester, take Chad along with you. It's like, yeah. And, it's like, I have to put up with this, OCD kid. We didn't know what OCD was. But anyway, you put up with them. And so they brought this boy to Jesus. And when the Spirit saw, what does the Spirit do to this boy?
It threw him into a convulsion.
You ever been around somebody when they have a convulsion? What's that like?
Scary.
Why is it scary?
Because you don't know what they're going to do, die or live.
They're out of control. We were in a worship service, and this guy falls out of the pew and starts rolling around underneath the pew. And somebody there, is like, what do we do? And some guy went down and just tried to protect him. Because, the pews, you got all these wooden stuff, you beat your head in on a corner. Just tried to protect him. He threw him into a convulsion. He's rolling around. He's foaming at the mouth. This is really bad. And to this, Jesus asked the boy's father, hey, how long has he been like this? Is this something new? And the father says, what? He's been like this since childhood. He's been like this for a long, long time. And he throws him into the fire or the water to kill him. And he says, Jesus, if you can do anything, take pity on us. It has thrown him. Is there anything you can do? Have you ever had that prayer with Jesus? Is there anything you can do? Life is just falling apart at the seams. Is there anything that you can do? You have the power. Do you have the power to change? Jesus is what he's asking. Do you really? Are you really who you say you are? You say all these things. You say you and the Father are one. You say that you're God. But can you help me? Can you help my boy? You see, Freddie Mercury, I don't know if you know who Freddie Mercury was, but he was a rock singer who died in his 30s of AIDS. And he said, you can have everything in the world and still be the loneliest man. He had all the money, he had all the fame. The father, he could have had all the money, all the fame, but his boy is here rolling on the ground. and there's nothing he can do. To which Jesus comes back and says, if you can, he says, how much is possible? Everything is possible for who? The one who believes. What did George say about faith? Faith is not like, oh yeah, it's out there. No, faith is a rock solid dependence. It says, no matter what, God, I'm going to trust you. I know you are God. And if you're really God, then you know what's going on. You don't need me to tell you. And you can fix this. Or you can bring me through it. You've got all of those abilities to do those things. And the Father says, help me overcome my unbelief. The Father knew his own limitations, didn't he? He said, my faith is limited. I need more. And it's really not about more faith, it's who the faith is in. Jesus is saying, I want you to trust, not anything, I want you to trust me. Bring your trust to me. And so when Jesus saw that the crowd was running, what does Jesus do? He rebukes the impure spirit. What does it mean to rebuke? To get rid of. To command. He has the power, he has the authority, he has the right. For you and I, when we drive, sometimes there's a vehicle comes up behind us with lights going and sirens. And, you know, the speed limit is 35, and they're doing like 70. Does anybody ever pull them over? No. Why not? Because they have the right, they have the authority, they have the power to override the normal laws. God made the rules, God made this world, he has the right to overrule them. And when he rebukes and Jesus commands, he's saying, I have the power to do this. And he does it. And he commands this unclean spirit. He commanded, and he didn't just say, get out. He said, get out. And you get out there and you stay out. I'm telling you to get out. And when he did, something like this happened. This is a scene from Jesus of Nazareth.
Rabbi, the demon has always tried to throw him into fire and into water to destroy him. If you could do anything, have mercy. Help my poor faith.
Satan! Leave him.
That's who Jesus is. He has that kind of power and authority over things that we can't begin to imagine, that we can't understand. And when we come to him like this desperate dad and say, can you help me? Jesus delivers. He does. The spirit shrieked, convulsed him violently, and came out. The boy looked so much like a corpse that many said he's dead, but Jesus took him by the hand and lifted him up, and he stood up. And people, how do you think people responded to this? Shocked. Do you think they sat around and said, very nice, good show, How did they react? I'm sorry? Mouth was open, speechless. They lost their breath. They were shocked. They said, "How is this possible?" And remember, we talked about this just the other week. Remember, when God created the universe, what did he do? He spoke. And what happened? Boom! The universe appears. The word of his power. Jesus speaks, and boom, the Spirit comes out. This is, again, he didn't need any incantations. He didn't need to go get certain kinds of medicines or perform a rite or a sacrifice. He said, it's done. And that's Jesus. He's telling people, this is who I am. And when the disciples, they're shocked about this whole thing. They're speechless. And finally, they go inside, and the disciples say, hey, what's up with us? Are we chopped liver? Are we spiritually? What's wrong with us? And Jesus said, this kind, which means there's got to be there's different kinds. But this kind came out only by prayer. This kind. There's a spiritual battle going on, he says, and this kind requires special power, my kind of power. You see, Jesus always wants more. Yeah, it would have been nice just to heal the boy, right? That would have been good, right? But he didn't want just that. He wanted the faith of the Father. And he wanted the faith of his disciples. And he wanted the faith of everybody who was watching, the teachers and everybody just hanging around. It's not just to heal the boy, but to bring people to himself. You see, they lived in a time and a culture and a place that said, if I do this and I do this and I do that, then guess what? God's going to do what I want him to do. I mean, it's like when I wash dishes. There is a certain way to wash dishes. And this is the fruit of my washing the dishes. Some people who know me at the house were looking at this and they're falling off their chair with laughter, because this is the way, this is legit. When I wash dishes, I take all the spoons, the small spoons, okay, and I wash just them. I pick them out, just them. I rinse them off, put them in, and they have to go in with the arm down, the spoon part up top. And then I do the knives. I do all the knives and get all the knives together and rinse them, put them up. And then I get the forks and make sure that, there's no dried egg in the middle of the tines, do that. And then I wash the dishes, and look how the dishes are done, right? You put all the same kind of dishes together, from the biggest down to the smallest. Anybody who wants to walk out now, we won't think any less of you. But, this is the way I was taught. This is the way you do it. And some people are like this spiritually. They say, if I do this, if I do this, if I do these certain things, then I've got God in a box. And he's got to do it. Think about the poor people who are following Buddha. Buddha said that salvation is, you got to just let go. You got to, all the attachments, you just got to let go of them. And then you got to die, you got to do good works, whatever they are, and then be reincarnated like 200,000 times till you get better, and then you reach nirvana, which is not you're not a person anymore. You become part of the all soul. There is no they have no idea whether they're going to heaven or not. It's another one of these lives? Are you kidding me? Or, if I do certain things, if I earn God's attention, this is from the other side, just so you know what a nut job I am. I got to earn God's attention. I got to do it his way. Think about those poor, poor people who are following Allah and Islam. They are saved by works. And they never know whether they got enough good works until they die. And then they appear before Allah, and then Allah then tells them whether they've done enough good stuff or not. There's actually a scale they believe in, that they put all the good works on one side and the bad works on the other. And if you're even just off by a little bit, eensy, weensy, teensy little bit, you're gone. That's it. There is no assurance of salvation. Nobody can have any real security. That's why there was a story about a guy who was walking to the mosque from one town to another. And this guy stopped him and he said, "Hey, friend, you're from this town over there, and there's a mosque there, but you're walking all this way to go to another town, to another mosque. Why?" He says, "I'm trying to show Allah I'm doing a bigger good work. I'm not just going to the mosque. I'm really struggling to go to the mosque. I'm going to go to the one in the next town, see what a great spiritual big shot I am." They never have the feeling. They never have the knowledge of who they are. There's no assurance that says, God loves me. There is none of that. It's that God demands, come on, pay up, work harder. It's like this scene at the end of one of the Blue Bloods.
With my retirement day creeping up on me, I was getting kind of scared. Job's been my whole life. A lot of guys with as much time in as we have, they're happy to hang it up, get away. Thing is, I love my wife, Frank. Love my kids. But between you and me, the only time I feel right, when I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, is when I'm on the job. And I don't know what I'm gonna do without that. I guess my drinking the last couple of years has been my way of dealing with that. The wrong way.
Don't you feel sorry for this guy? He says, the only time I feel right, the only time I feel like I'm exactly where I belong is when I'm on my job. And it's great to have that as a job, but guess what? The job ends eventually, one way or the other. And what's left at the end of that? Now, maybe you were not an officer, or maybe you're still working, or maybe you're retired, but we still have the same question. What gives me meaning and purpose in life? For this guy, it was his job, and it's going to end. And what did he start to do? He started to drink. More and more, and it got out of control. Now, some of us we self-medicate with drink. Some of us self-medicate with drugs. Some people self-medicate with pornography. Some people self-medicate with anger. Some people self-medicate by trying to do good things to make up for the bad, for this emptiness inside of them. We have to find out what is the work. You see, this guy's asking, what's the work that's going to give me meaning and purpose? And we all ask that exact same question. And some people came up to Jesus. This is such a big question that's been out there for thousands of years. You know, the crowd asked Jesus, what must we do to do the works that God requires? You know, what are they? How are we going to know when we get over the finish line? And what does Jesus say? The work of God is this, to do what?
Believe in the one he has sent.
Believe in the one that God has sent. Belief in me. That's it. Belief in Jesus gives us meaning and purpose. It says, you are so loved that God left his throne and came to die for you and for me. If that doesn't give us reason to shout and rejoice, the God of heaven, the God who made all this stuff, and then we've screwed it up royally, and what does he do? I don't know about you, but if I was on the throne of heaven and somebody came up to me and said, you know that world that you created? There are a bunch of people down there who have just screwed it up. They have just done all this stuff and have ruined it. They're hurting one another. What should we do? I was like, throw them away. But not the God who loves us, the God who sent his own son. God says, I want you to have the faith to trust me, that even when all hell is breaking loose, when everything's coming apart at the seams, I'm still there. We all know Wendy and Bill Brock, they're not here today. They're in Michigan visiting their family. Wendy's has gone through breast cancer. She had the procedure. She's had the chemotherapy. And now, because she's feeling so great, they're going to do radiation now. And so they're getting ready. So she went up, and I don't know if you saw this story that she told. I'll let Wendy tell the story.
So anyway, so we're in the Guitar Center. This guy comes in, older guy, kind of like us. And he's got stars all over his shirt. And I walked up to him. I don't know why I walked up to him, but I told him, I says, can you help me? I'm a grandma. I'm from Florida. I'm visiting my grandkids. My grandson has taught himself how to play guitar. He's been doing it for a year, but he's borrowing a amplifier from the church. It's just a little one, from the church. And I want to do something special for Josh. Well, I walk over to the one that's $69 on sale. It's because of the little bitty one. It's only like 10 watts, I think. And the guy says, oh, no, you don't want that. You want something bigger. Well, I says, well, yeah, I know, but I haven't worked since March. And I was like, And so anyway, I'm looking at cheap ones, it's like we get anywhere over $69. I'm like, oh, can't afford that, But I want to get Josh something because I want to encourage him that he continue on this. And my gosh, that kid is so talented. So next thing I know, Josh is sitting down. Well, I want to try this guitar, Grandma. He's already got 2 guitars that he had bought by saving up money from doing odd jobs for his grandparents up here in Michigan. Next thing I know, the owner of the store walks over to us and he says, that guy just bought this $400 amplifier for your grandson. I'm like, what? He says, and the guy's got this look of amazement on his face and he goes, he just bought that $400 Fender 100-watt amplifier. It's sitting in the car next to him. Gosh. We didn't even know this guy. I just happened to, start talking to him, but I started crying, of course, because it's like, really? He doesn't even know us. And it was just, it's like, God just continues to bless us and just amazes me. Evidently Satan didn't want you to hear my one before, because if you don't know Jesus, you need to learn and you need to find out about him and you need to give your life to him.
That's a great story. Just someone, she's no spiritual giant, forgive me, Wendy. She's just like you and me. And she's gone through it. And she's still going through it. She called me up, she told me this story, and we're enjoying one another's company and the goodness of God. And I said, I'm rejoicing with you. I'm shouting. I'm so happy for her that God would be so kind to show himself in this real way. And I said, would you mind if, because you know me, I can't keep my mouth shut. Nobody stood up and said, no, Chet. Anyway, I said, Wendy, I want to give you 2 pieces to carry with you from this moment. She said, what is that? I said, first, enjoy it and tell everybody. Tell your neighbors, your friends, anyone, total strangers. Rejoice and be glad in this moment. And she said, well, what's the other thing? I said, remember this moment. Because life is not always moments like this. And you're going to need encouragement somewhere down the line. You're going to be at the end of your rope. You're going to say, I'm ready to punt life. But God, you were faithful. And I want to remember that. I want to stay with that one. You see, we have this idea that, this is a great story. And we rejoice in God for it, and we thank Him. But there are no 100% guarantees that life is going to be like this all the time. And you better be ready. Think about in Philippians 2, Paul leaves this guy who's sick at the point of death. Doesn't heal him. Or Timothy, his spiritual son. He's got all sorts of health problems, and Paul tells him to take a little bit of wine with his water, with his dinner, for his stomach. Paul didn't heal him. Or there's another guy in Corinth who was ill. Paul didn't heal him. We don't know why. It was something that God said, not now or not in this way. There are no 100% guarantees. Except the 100% guarantee that God is with us. The 100% guarantee that no matter what happens, God is with us. He is with you. He is with me. Tomorrow is September 11th. It's a day we all remember, for sure. There were no guarantees on that morning. But there was a guy, his name was Peter Ganci. He was 33 years old. He was the chief of departments. That's the highest ranking guy in the New York Fire Department. When the first tower was struck, he left the headquarters, 10 minutes, lights and sirens. They set up a command post right at the base of the Twin Towers. And they set up this command post, and they moved it into the basement of the South Tower. Now, the South Tower was the first one that went down. They dug themselves out. He and the guys in that command post dug themselves out of the rubble. Now, I don't know about you. That would have been enough for me, right? I was like, I've put in my time. I had a building fall on me. I think I'm going to go get a latte. I need to take a break. I need to get away from this, right? No, not this guy. No. The chief returned to the towers and came to stand in front of the other tower where he was directing the rescue efforts. And he told the mayor and the commissioners to clear the area because everybody knew the other tower, the North Tower, was coming down. The chief stayed there. He said, I'm not leaving my men. He was killed when the North Tower collapsed. It was said that he was always right in the front lines. He got out of the first one, right? Praise God. But he stayed at the task and is memorialized at the Tower Memorial in New York City. His name is there. He had the opportunity to walk away. He had the chance to say, I've done my bit. I've worked hard. Now it's time for a rest. Not Chief Ganci. He stayed. And the reason he did this is because he was committed to the safety, to who he was and the role that God had given him. And he said, Everything, all hell's breaking loose. Planes are flying into buildings. Towers are falling. The place is loaded with dust and debris. And he stays at his post. Because inside of him, he had this small voice that said, my job's not done. It's like the movie 2 Week Notice with Hugh Grant and Sandra Bullock. What a great little movie. And she comes to work for Hugh Grant, and he is just ridiculous. And she eventually quits and gives 2 week notice. And they're sitting down talking about why she is the way she is. And she says about her mother, she said, she's the voice in my head. She's the voice in my head. When I think, when I speak, it's her voice in my head that I keep hearing. And I thought to myself, who is the voice in my head? Who is the voice in your head? Who is the voice that when everything is falling apart, do I come apart? Do you come apart? Or is it the voice in my head that says, I'm still in control. I am God. And one day we're going to spend eternity together. I died for you. Is that what's going to hold us together? Or are we going to flail our arms and yell and scream? We have a choice. We have a choice. So the question is, which way are you going to turn? When Jesus was faced with the choice of dying for us, with going through the excruciating pain of the cross and the even greater emotional pain of being separated from his Father for the first time in all eternity, what did he do? Remember in the garden when he was betrayed, remember the words he said? He said, you're looking for Jesus? It's like, where is he? No. He said, here I am. I'm right here. He pointed himself out, so there was no confusion. And he went with them. He volunteered for a job that no one would volunteer for. The voice in his head said, I love these people. I'm going to die for them. I'm going to give everything I am for them. Will we make him the voice in our head, the voice in our heart, the voice in our life today? Would you pray with me? Our Father and our God, I'm so grateful that you love us beyond what we can understand, beyond what we can really see, beyond life itself. We thank you that your love for us didn't just sit there and say, yeah, I love him, but you took action. Forgive us when we just sit around, when we goof off for you. Thank you that you bring us to yourself and you say, I want to walk with you this day. Thank you that you want to walk with us today and all the days of our life. In Jesus' name, amen.